Please remember, I am not a financial advisor. We can all pretend to be cynical and scheming, but when we're faced with purity and innocence, the cynical mask drops off. Federico Fellini. James Daly is an advisor and senior associate for the Mojaloop Foundation. He is a founder of Mifos, and they have a platform called Mifos X.
So, what type of ledger are being used by these CBDCs? So, are they using a private distributed ledger, or are you using like Ethereum or other public distributed ledgers? What are you seeing on this aspect?
So we're in some of these private in some of these efforts that are showing up, they're forks of Ripple, or they're Ripple, the XRP, or they're forks of Ripple, or they're Ripple, the XRP, or they are Stellar is one of the groups involved. What are some of the others? Yeah, so these are technologies that were developed for stable coins.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're being proposed by these companies to be the solution to the CBDC set of challenges. And at the end of the day, I suspect that the groups or the technologies that are chosen will need to have a lot of openness to them. And so to the extent that those blockchain technologies are not open, I think there will be, well, I don't even know why you would even entertain a non-open non-open source or ledger system, because a central bank would not want to have some one vendor. I just don't think that's a way we will go.
The advisor of Mojaloop, that is backed by the Rockefeller Foundation and Google, when asked about CBDC being on a public ledger, specifically Ethereum, he ignores Ethereum and says forks of Ripple or Ripple's XRP, some on Stellar. We know that Mojaloop is using Interledger. We know that Mojaloop is partnered with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, Egypt, 13 central banks in Africa. I would imagine the advisor to Mojaloop has deep insight on how central banks are creating CBDCs. And he says, a fork of Ripple or Ripple. He also states that private ledgers are not a good solution and the solution needs to be open. That means crypto, not the systems the private systems that are being built by R3 or Bit. An open system where anyone can speak to the ledger and build on the top of.
So the idea here is when a person tells you they want a walled garden and you can't convince them that they want something that's open, what you do is you build them a walled garden, but you make it very easy to take the walls down. You make the walls just very porous. And so these private ledgers would be completely operated by their counterparties. So like if the Federal Reserve adopted the system, the Federal Reserve would operate a ledger. If something went wrong, they could shut it off. They could rewind it to the past. They can do whatever they want on it. But two things happen. So first of all, what's going to happen is there are going to be people who are inside and outside the walled garden, and they'll be able to make money sort of by arbitrage by the fact that they have access to both systems. This is kind of one of the things that banks do today. Like you can't make a wire transfer without a bank. And so banks can charge you for a wire transfer. And essentially what they're charging for is access to a system that you don't have access to. And so what will happen is like if there's the more people who have access to that inside system, the lower that cost difference will go. If I can go to many, many different places to do that, then the amount that they can charge will go down. And at some point, people will realize that the walls just aren't facilitating anything.
The idea of closed systems is a barrier to innovation, and the whole purpose of this transformation is efficiency, inclusion, and economic prosperity. Open systems allow anybody to build solutions, and this is how innovations take hold. People build, and the best solutions rise to the top. David is saying this will come in stages. Closed systems until proven. This is why federated sidechains are important. ledgers that have the ability to be open or closed but talk to the public XRPL. If central banks are using private XRPL that have a bridge to the public XRPL, the innovation is attracted to the openness of the XRPL, and that will mean more demand for XRP.
The dollars to remain the world's primary reserve currency cannot remain an analog instrument. It must become a digitized tokenized currency. That's from the US Dollar Project, which was Federal Reserve funded. And Janet Yellen, fairly recently, we do have a problem with financial inclusion. Too many Americans don't have access. This is something that the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, could help with. So she's hedging her bets there. It could result in, but those are some thoughts from some of the leaders in these institutions, and I think it shows the direction that we are traveling in.
When push comes to shove and the U.S. has to innovate, how will that happen? They'll ask the private sector, particularly the companies like Microsoft and Google. We have seen this before with DARPA and the NSA working with Google. Oh, by the way, David Schwartz used to work for the NSA.
I have more conversation with people on the street related to crypto than anything. So it's fantastic seeing how people have become so fascinated about it that they're showing interest in this. Whether this is going to play out well in the long run, we'll see. As I said, I see huge opportunities in a digitized crypto blockchain related currency, and that's where I think it's going, and that's going to create some big winners and some big losers.
Wall Street is discussing crypto with Larry Fink. Larry sees huge opportunities with crypto. He's telling you that there will be winners and huge losers. This bull run has been interesting. The biggest gainers have been meme coins. The masses are being led there by design.
There are issues with them. There's sometimes huge issues, sometimes smaller issues, but smaller issues that become big issues under stress. And so you can't have them at the core. They may play some roles, just to be clear, and again, this may be too techy, but there are roles for what are called native currencies in smart contract networks and some wholesale finance opportunities. And so you see a lot of activity around that. Based off of Ethereum or Ripple.
Mark Carney a while back leaked two of the winners.
In the form of thinking about different pools of liquidity. Today, just using an example, and I think that's part of what is close to Cybos too in terms of payments, foreign exchange. I think, artificially bucket liquidity differently, whether that's exchange traded, whether that's retail, and whether that is over-the-counter electronically, they're all trading and exchanging currencies. If one could innovatively pool this liquidity together and offer that seamlessly round the clock, which does happen now for consumers even on weekend, I think that will create far more efficiency and lower costs for the consumer. And then last but not least, I think you asked earlier, in the financial markets or capital markets of the future, it's no longer just trading into any centralized marketplace. I think one has to be thinking and planning for decentralized marketplaces, as Sopandu talked about earlier.
Apex, the XRP conference, discussed automated market makers for the XRPL. Recently, Ashish Birla wrote an article for TechCrunch discussing how much liquidity crypto has and how it can be used for cross-border payments.
How do we get our economy and our businesses in the same line of adopting technology? Because it is undoubtedly going to be a technology-driven construct. And the best way to deal with that is to first focus on how to accelerate our own adoption of technologies within the businesses, within the country, so that piece gets strengthened. And the second piece I would think is talent, because as you're preparing for this future economy, the kind of talent you need will dramatically shift. And we got to ensure that we have the right talent pool in Singapore who are ready to build, operate, and consume this new digital economy. And the third piece, I would say that we got to start thinking about connecting our systems, our processes to world at large, to different countries, so that we start, because ultimately the Singapore relies on global trade flows. And we got to ensure that our systems are interoperable with the global systems. We make effort to connect our payment systems, our data systems, whatever the future construct will look like, whether it's a decentralized finance or embedded finance, able to cross the jurisdictions and cross to different jurisdictions and able to connect the systems will be key to ensure the future is taken care as it evolves so quickly with this new kind of technology-driven economic construct.
In this IMF document, it states crypto asset markets are growing rapidly. Crypto asset prices remain highly volatile. Furthermore, the volume of crypto asset transactions has reached macro-critical levels in some emerging markets, often as high as those domestic equities. A sound regulatory framework for crypto assets and decentralized finance markets more generally must be a priority on the global policy agenda. This is particularly pressing for stablecoins, for which some business models have been subject to risk of sudden and severe liquidity pressures. A regulatory level playing field is a key priority.
No, look, we're so early, right? So if you think about the internet, right? Microsoft, Intel, Cisco, that's a lot of wealth, right? That is the x-axis, or if you think about the internet, right? Web 1 is parallel to the x-axis. Web 2 is the knee of the parabolic curve. And Web 3 is parallel to the y-axis. So if you think of the area under the curve as the value, the area under the, Web 1, Intel, Microsoft, Cisco, that's a decent amount of wealth, but it barely looks like anything because it's parallel to the x-axis. Web 2, Alibaba, Netflix, Google, Amazon, way more wealth, like orders of magnitude more, first $1 trillion companies. That's the knee of the curve, right? We haven't even gotten to the parabolic growth part of Web 3, which is going to create untold wealth. And so, but every time there's a bust in between, right? We couldn't have the applications formed unless we had the failure in 2000. People said it's over, right? And so the other problem you have, and we'll probably talk about this, is that the incumbents really don't want the disruptors to win. So they will fight really hard. They'll throw up regulatory barriers. They'll try to buy up the companies and shelve the technology. I mean, people forget, right? This is a long time. People forget that in 1903, the largest car company in America was the American Electric Vehicle Corp. We had electric cars in 1903. That was going to be the future until Henry Ford shut him down by shelving the technology because he wanted people to buy his partner, John D. Rockefeller's, kerosene waste product called gasoline. So now we have internal combustion engines. So for 100 plus years, we used inferior technology because commerce wins that way. And so the same thing's going to happen here is we'll have a bust. It'll probably be around regulatory friction. It'll probably be around fear. It'll probably be around the transition from infrastructure to applications. But on the other side, massive.
The silver lining with Ripple and the SEC is that this case will end in clarity, and on the other side will be massive.
There's a critical need for a national conversation on how we're going to use technology in an open society. This is much larger than cryptocurrency. It's much larger than digital payments. This is about the future of the internet. It's about the next generation of the internet.
Now, there are some big ideas for what's known as Web 3, better security, more control over privacy, more opportunities for more people. But there are also some specific policy priorities as well, like embracing stablecoins, writing rules based on risk, and possibly creating a new regulatory agency focused on crypto.
Right now, you have a dozen different federal agencies, all of which are trying to find their place in an increasingly complex and convoluted regulatory environment. And many of them are applying regulatory frameworks that are 70 or 80 years old to very cutting edge technologies. That just doesn't work so well.
Gensler's policy by enforcement is uniting the crypto sphere. Right now it is a $2 trillion market cap with plenty of influential people. One doesn't remember one's own life chronologically, the way it happened, what was most important, or even what seemed most important. We are not in control of our memories. One doesn't own one's memories. One is owned by them. Federico Fellini. Thanks everyone, I hope you enjoyed my show. If you enjoy my work and wish to support my channel, please consider joining my Patreon. Remember to hit the bell.